And now for something completely different.
Have we got Laura? Laura in the house.
Yeah, sorry, I had to take myself off of mute.
No problem at all. So I've kind of coined you kind of queen of hashtags, if that's okay.
Okay, but my hashtag is thanks to Olivia. She's the one that created it. I just
everyone's so what I'm learning is that everyone's kind of like taking off everyone else. Okay, but
exactly,
so
it's a group.
Yeah, but so the main question I have for you is, how have you got it covered, right? So where did that come from? Where did the hashtag Laura has it covered kind of originally came from?
So I'm an insurance coverage lawyer. So Gotcha. That's what the cover is. Or we call them coverages in the US. In the UK, they actually call them covers. So It works well in the UK as well. I wanted to have a hashtag to, create interest. Maybe people would follow it. Trying to sort of dip my toe into this whole marketing side of things. And Olivia had created a couple of hashtags for other women in our group. And she came up with a bunch of awesome choices, and that's the one I chose. So, and I keep using it. Every post, it's in there.
I know. I love it. It's really good. Because the question I had for you is like, so reading through your chapter, you obviously these are kind of the thing, your posts within LinkedIn, right? So how did you kind of come about writing, I suppose, so eloquently, right, for LinkedIn? Because some of the stuff out there is a load of rubbish. So do you just kind of map something out, or how did you kind of get to this kind of not only kind of informal process, but kind of then posting it out to LinkedIn? What is your method?
Well, so I do a lot of writing as part of my job, and I enjoy writing. And one of the things that is necessary when you're a coverage lawyer, at least to do the job well, is to explain what is oftentimes very complicated, multiple step analysis to a judge that may have no background in insurance. So I'm used to breaking things into bite-sized pieces and describing them in a way that hopefully is easy for everyone to understand. So that's how I approach writing a post. I will say one of the most challenging things for me in a post is to get the information I want out in a clear way in 1,300 characters or less, and have room for, Laura has it covered at the end. So that's always a challenge. My process, I like to get information out. That's sort of my backstop. Luckily, through both connections on LinkedIn and subscription services and a lot of different insurance-related information, it's been pretty easy to get that information. So there's always something to put out there. And insurance has its tentacles into just about everything. So even if there's not an insurance case, there's a case that's either about a liability that no one had thought of, or maybe we've got legislation that's limiting COVID liability, or things like that, which will impact on insurance as well. And I try and keep it interesting, because everyone thinks insurance is boring, and one of my goals is to make it more interesting.
No, that's fair. And so obviously you all are kind of LinkedIn rock stars, right? So, and this is kind of how I suppose this all came about. Can you tell me about your experience of being part of the LinkedIn rock stars?
Well, I was one of the early people in the group. Trisha invited me into the group before we knew much of anything about COVID. I think maybe it was late fall of 2019. Trisha's nodding her head, so it seems like that maybe is right. And I remember when she sent me this direct message on LinkedIn, I'm like, what is this? Why is someone interested in joining with me? I basically just started a month or so earlier, really being active on LinkedIn. So I was like, why not? I'll give it a try. And the group from the beginning has been amazing. Lisa Lang was also one of the original people, and Claire, and different efforts to support each of us, whether it was, I just saw this, I thought, it might be something you're interested in, you could post about, or you could write an article, or how to respond to a comment or what issues might be interesting in posting. We did a lot of stuff on different things like what time of day do you post? And does that work better or worse? And from all that, I have developed certain, I don't know, things. I pretty much always post between 7 and 9 a.m. on the East Coast time. And I pretty much almost never write them before. I write them the morning of, whatever sort of strikes me. Other people are much more plan ahead. I always think I'm going to plan ahead, and then the night before I decide to go to sleep instead of writing it. So.
No, I'm impressed. I love someone who's got a strategy for stuff, right? Because I'm sure it based kind of in insurance type of things. You need a process. And I suppose that's what you kind of follow, right? So no, it's all very interesting. But thank you. No, that was great. So let's talk to Kristen. Kristen?
Hey, Rob, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. You look so professional this morning. Oh, you put me to shame. So are you working from home, or where are you in the world?
I'm in my office in downtown Greensboro, North Carolina.
Nice. Who's the football team in North Carolina?
The Carolina Panthers.
See, I don't know. But all I know is, so have the Bills got to the Super Bowl? Has that happened yet, or are they nearly in the Super Bowl?
Almost.
That is impressive, right? So like my old boss, he made me be a Buffalo Bills fan, which I knew was a terrible thing. Whenever I speak to an American, they're like, really? You want to be a Buffalo fan? But it's fine. Anyway.
Well, my assistant, he's a Bills fan, and he's really excited about what's going on right now. So I get to hear about it all the time.
You sound like you're like, oh, can you stop talking? But no, that's cute. It is good. I'm a big fan of the underdog, right? So can you so obviously you have a picture of a mask on your picture when it comes to this, but so how were you kind of affected by kind of COVID over the last kind of 12 months?
Been affected a lot. And I think my path, and the reason I actually chose a photo with the mask on for the cover of the book, instead of a regular headshot, is just to sort of show that this has affected us a lot. And especially those of us, I think, with the exception of Olivia, I'm really the only one in the group who has a criminal practice. I limit my practice exclusively to criminal defense. And because of constitutional considerations, criminal courts did not fully shut down. So work from home was not an option for me. There are some people who were able to sort of take a step back. I was not. I left the district attorney's office after 15 years in October of 2019 to open my own law practice. And so I hustle hard all the time. When I was in the DA's office, I used to work weekends too, but I still do that, obviously. And now I hustle even harder because I'm building this empire for myself. Sure. And I couldn't take my foot off the accelerator when COVID hit. So it was mask up, wash hands, keep sanitizing, get to court, get to the jails, and keep representing my clients. And, there are many of my colleagues who have done the same thing. And I think at a time when some people were taking a step back, those of us who kind of continued to show up and take a step forward, kind of put ourselves on the map and got noticed in a big way. And it's important. It's especially important in criminal practice because our clients need to know, especially the incarcerated ones, they need to know that their lawyers are still there, that they're still going to be there. They're still advocating for them. They're still trying to get them out of jail. And we're still fighting for them really, really hard. So I think that, we've certainly had to pivot. We've had to change some things, the way we're doing some things. But at the heart of it, it's just been really kind of just throwing a mask on, saying a prayer, and we got to get on with it.
So has the process changed? Is court still in face to face, or has it gone virtual? What's the practice over in the US at the moment?
So in civil court, most of all that has moved to virtual, but in criminal court, we were in a shutdown. There has not been a jury trial in our county. Well, they had one back in November, but before that, it had shut down in March. March 17th, 20th is when everything shut down, or it was March 13th. That was the day everything shut down. And even now, we're still having, we still have face-to-face court. We've been having it this whole time. It's been more limited in the criminal world to courts of due process. So we're having first appearances and bond motions. Courts have reopened now. And so there are some trials in our misdemeanor courts. We still have not resumed jury trials. In my county, jury trials are not scheduled to resume until March the 1st.
So this kind of ambiguity that's going on, right? So your clients need almost you to be kind of that rock, right? So is and I suppose you sounds like you take that very like personally, right? Is that kind of your method for this? Is just be like, I'm here, I've got you, sort of thing, right?
I'm here. Like, I take it very seriously. I'm here. I am the living, breathing Sixth Amendment for my clients. Their right to counsel. That's what I am. And that's what I embody. And that is what I remind myself of every day, especially when it gets overwhelming. Our numbers here right now, COVID numbers are really out of control. Things have not necessarily been handled the best way by the power structure. And so it's a little unnerving at times. But I try to just remind myself that there is something greater that I have to show up and work for every day. Of course, while being as safe as I can, but it is bigger than myself.
And so the main thing that kind of struck me about your chapter is routine, right? So I like to think I'm good at a routine. Like I'm a good prepper for a routine, right? But then never execute it. So have you got any words of wisdom on how you kind of stick to your routine?
This whole time, I never gave up my routine. The alarm still goes off at 6 o'clock. I take a shower. I dress up. I love dressing up. And I post a lot of that on my Instagram, not necessarily LinkedIn, but just keeping that up is so important to me. Showing up to the jail, showing up to court, making sure that I'm just doing everything I would be doing, even if COVID wasn't happening right now, just making sure we keep to as much of that routine as possible, because routine is such a savior. I think I probably would have done well in the military.
I think you'd have been extremely scary in the military. So there's some people out there that have probably been saved. So, but no, thank you so much. I really appreciate that in your time. So we've got an Angie. Is that Angie here? No, Angie. Oh, I was going to talk to her, but okay, that's fine. No, Angie. Who was next on my list? So we got Claire. Is there Claire?
Yes, right here.
How you doing? Good morning.
Pretty good.
Where are you in the world?
I am in Kentucky. I am about an hour and a half, I guess, close to that, away from Lisa. I'm up close to Cincinnati, Ohio. Gotcha.
Yeah. So when I originally spoke to Lisa, she was telling me all about the football team's the Stallions. Is that right? Or have I got that completely wrong? She'll probably tell me later or tell me off. You don't know.
We don't have a pro football team in Kentucky. We have UK, which is hardly a football team, and the Cardinals, where Lisa and I went at U of L, which is pretty good. But we have the Bengals here in Cincinnati, and they're terrible. So we're really more of a basketball area of the world.
No, that's fair. But so talking about rabbit holes, as I almost got myself into one about football, like there's lots of things out there that you can get lost in, right? So why did you decide to kind of get lost in the wonderful world of LinkedIn?
I didn't really decide to do it. I mean, it truly was a rabbit hole kind of situation. I started writing and blogging in 2018. There was a program for Miss JD, which is a website devoted to helping women lawyers and women law students advance in the profession. And I was a writer in residence for that in 2018. I had blog posts, and you had to kind of share out your stuff or nobody saw it. So I started sharing it on LinkedIn. I got a little bit of traction there. And then I started doing some original posts, I think in 2019 more, and people started engaging with it. Whereas before, nobody would. It would be literally crickets anytime you did a post. Mm-hmm. And so I just started doing more. I'm a very bad overthinker. And what I've learned over the years, I started a meditation practice years ago. But what I've learned over the years is that my overthinking is really ideas for writing. So I have you've asked others about their process. I don't have a process. I just have an idea and I'm able to quickly write it and post on LinkedIn. And I kind of just go with it most days, unless I have an event or an article or something specific to share. But most of the time I just come up with it, write it, and go. And I just try to do stuff that benefits people, maybe makes people laugh, maybe makes lawyers understand they can be humans. And that's about it.
So a question from a terrible LinkedIn poster. What did it feel like when you kind of hit one of your posts hit 150,000 views, right? Like how did that come about?
Well, that was one actually I wrote about meeting with a law student who actually went to U of L, and a friend referred him to me. And I met with a law student, and I just wrote a post about, I'm of course going to meet with this law student and take time to meet with him, because when I was a law student, I went and met with the lawyer in the area around my law school. And I was going to not take a job at my firm because I thought I wanted to do plaintiff's work. And after talking to him, he said such great things about my firm that I went and accepted the job the next day. And now I'm a partner at my firm. So I kind of said, look, it's important to pay it forward. And here's a story about why it is important to talk to law students and encourage them. And I think because it had that message and a story, it did really well. But I was glad that it was an important message, I think, for the profession and for law students. And that's one that went viral. So that was really neat.
That is awesome. Did you have a lot of students reach out to you and want to talk about things more, or was there what happened after that post for you?
I did have some students reach out and some students follow. I mean, I got a lot of follows and stuff from that. But I love talking to students. It makes me happy, honestly. I mean, I have to sometimes manage my time and say, I can't talk to you yet. I have to do it next week. But it invigorates me to talk to students. I actually just talked to a young lady in Kentucky here who's a law student. And after talking to me, she went and bought the book. And it turns out, like, I wrote about the hero's journey, and she had written a paper on that when she was in college. And so she loved, like, how I used old stories to kind of mix with LinkedIn. And you can come up with these brilliant connections with people that you never would have found. And I kind of say law students are the partners and the CEOs and the clients of the future. So, if you're not mentoring them now, I think you're really missing out on a chance to continue your network for decades to come.
That makes sense. The other thing that resonated me from your post is kind of the heroine's journey, right? So it's like all, as you say in your chapter, kind of all previous stories have talked about blokes doing stuff, right? So how did that kind of, obviously about Campbell and the things that he wrote and kind of how Star Wars, there's a phrase called half-inched right here in the UK, which effectively means that George Lucas pinched it, right? Or stole, but he's not going to listen to this. It'll be fine. But so how did you kind of take that, I suppose, mindset, and obviously you like stories, and kind of implement into your process?
I mean, I think if you read Campbell and understand sort of what that is saying, I think that, he had messed up ideas about women, I think, a little bit because of his time. But I think part of what Campbell is saying is that we have our own hero's journeys that we live through our life if we pay attention. And what I really liked about the hero's journey and the heroine's journey and that myth of Psyche is that we feel like we're in this mess sometimes, and we feel like we don't know what we are doing. That is part of the process of becoming fully fledged human beings with agency that can help the world around us. So I think sometimes I really like that idea of the Psyche myth, and I read about it and I knew I was going to use it, but I didn't know how until I got the chance to write this chapter. But sometimes I think women professionals especially are told we have to know what we're doing. We have to do everything right. We have to look good doing it. And if we deviate from that path, we're sunk. But I think if you really look at the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, I think that's exactly wrong, because we have to go make a mess. We have to go do things we don't know what we're doing, and we have to find friends to help us. And that's really the way to make progress and to make the world better, in my opinion.
I think the friends bit is important, right? So we always need other people to kind of help us, because we're always going to have elements of feeling unsure, and we all kind of wake up sometime and go, oh, I don't want to do today, right? So has this kind of this group of women really helped you in that?
Yes, this group and other groups of women. I mean, I think I pointed the friends piece out because I have historically been an overthinker, but also a self-isolator. And so my meditation practice sort of helped me unravel both of those negative aspects of myself. So when I started to get out into the world more and develop communities of friends, my life just changed drastically in like the course of a very short period of time. But it was because I was finally sharing myself with the world, sharing my burdens with my friends, sharing my ideas, and they helped me get past my burdens, and they helped me move into the world. And so that piece of the friendship piece was huge for me, because I'm actually more of an introvert. I tend to do everything on my own, but it's not really the way to success. It's not your success. It's building success with everyone around you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Claire. I really appreciate it. So I suppose I should talk to Winter. She's around.
I'm here.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good morning. Oh, I love the background. It's perfect. It's like you've done this before.
A couple times.
Couple of times. So you do a podcast yourself now, right? I saw on LinkedIn.
I do. It's called The Mediate Now.
What's it about?
Well, it's obviously about mediation, but
Sure.
it's about how mediation skills can apply to our everyday lives. And I will be talking to various experts and people in different fields, and connecting that back to mediation and real life.
How did that podcast come around? Right. So we talked about why I do this before we started, but was the network a launch pad for that, or how did this come about for you?
Oh, wow.
Big question.
So, yeah. Going through my I guess my journey for the past 10 months or so, and on LinkedIn, I've come across so many people who have unusual views about mediation,
Sure.
and what should happen and how it should work, and a lot of those people are also mediators, and I mediate a little bit differently than other people do, and I think that we need to change it up a bit, and this is my platform to do it. I guess I want to reach more people, and more everyday people who aren't necessarily on LinkedIn.
I suppose that's right, because is kind of the primary focus to put that on YouTube, or where can people find you?
No, the primary focus is the audio version. There will be a YouTube version.
Okay,
but
so like an audio podcast. Okay.
Yeah, ordinary podcast. Available wherever you listen to your podcast.
All your local podcasts. That's cool. So the thing for me, and you'll have to explain it first, from your chapter is and kind of stood out for me is kind of your bit about above the law, right? So you were like, you kind of were really focused that's what you wanted to be published and do something. So can you, for the people who do listen and watch this, can you explain what above the law is, and then why you wanted to kind of be part of that process?
Yeah. So Above the Law is a legal blog, I guess, for lack of a better term. It is hugely popular. I've been reading it forever. And it was kind of unusual thing. I had written an article about my, I guess, motherhood, my journey as a mother during COVID. And I was just posting it in a few different places. And I posted it on Facebook in Mothers Esquire, which, Claire is a big part of. I know some of the other women are too, Jamie. And they asked me if I would switch it up, and if I would be cool with having it be part of their their partnership with Above the Law. And it was just like a really, really cool thing. So I never really thought that it would happen. So, I mean, I am such a different person than I was 10 months ago, right? So like trying to get back into that mindset. So I definitely thought it wasn't something that would happen. And then I just started putting myself out there all the time. And so to have someone read what I had written and really connect to it and think that other people would connect to it and that it was, you know, worth doing, you know, more with it, that was really, really cool. And that was a big turning point for me, I think. And when that article was published, it got me a lot of attention, which of course is part of what I needed. But it was also just a huge boost for my confidence, I guess, at the time. You know, when you're on LinkedIn and kind of in this COVID bubble, and you're not really seeing people, and I wasn't really talking to that many people either. You know, I had no idea if what I was doing was making like any real impact. You're just kind of posting into the, you know, into the ether, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Until you get feedback. And so at that point, I was like, oh, I guess I am doing okay. I should keep doing this.
But that must have been a huge confidence boost, right, for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it kind of looked like no one likes to post stuff that they've kind of put their heart and soul into, and then you get crickets, right? That's just the worst. So those kind of positive moments, can you see those as kind of your launch pad for starting your podcast, for further articles? Was that real helpful for you?
I never really thought of it that way, but I mean, I don't see why that would be a mischaracterization. Yeah, I think when that happened, it was before I was part of this group, obviously, because I did not know Claire at the time.
Sure.
Was I part of the group? I don't know. I don't think I was.
It's like we can say yes. No one's going to fact check this.
I don't remember.
It's all right.
I know. I don't remember anyway. So yeah, it was a huge boost. And it just made me want to keep going and see how many times I could kind of recreate that spark.
Cool. And then, so finally, before we move on, what are the key things that kind of, so I haven't asked this question yet, but if people were interested in the book, what would you say was the main kind of takeaway, right? What if I wanted to read this book, what would you be like, this, you should read this book because of X?
The likability and relatability of the women in our stories. And so we all have very different stories, but everyone can relate to something in each and every story. And that's really what I hear from people all the time after they've read the book. It's, you know, someone will tell me I have a very different life from everyone in the book, but I related to every single person and every story. And, you know, each one is an inspiration. So I think it's the relatability of us.
Yeah. I also think it's the vulnerability, right? So I was reading this and like, again, I'm a bloke, and I was just like, the honesty in this book, right, is awesome. So if men wrote this honestly, then it would be a different world. So I do really kind of thank you guys for that honesty. But no, thank you, Winter.